I'm in high school, and I'm dating a guy that I was crazy about. We spent a lot of time together, and I found myself in a mess. I went to my mom and said, I haven't had my period, and she just kind of, it's probably nothing. So weeks went by, several weeks, and then that turned to several months. And by this time, I think Mom knew. I knew I was getting anxious. I was freaking out. And by the time we went to the doctor, I was several months pregnant. And I think what hit me the most was, I'm gonna have to have this baby, and I wasn't ready to be a mom at all. Like, I was in high school, I was playing sports, I was on student council. Like, what on earth was fixing to happen to my life? And I just couldn't imagine anybody finding out. What was all of that gonna look like? Well, fast forward to walking out of the doctor's office, and I ended up choosing not to have the baby, and actually had a late-term abortion. And I remember just thinking, as I was getting ready to go into the hospital to have that procedure, it's much unlike a regular procedure. And so I think maybe my shame was even more, because, that was the worst, what I was fixing to do. So I survived that, and I remember just thinking, everything's got to look different now. Like, he's got to go, because anything that reminded me of what just happened had to go. I wouldn't allow my mom to talk about it. I couldn't hear commercials, about abortion, or I couldn't be around, young babies or nothing like that. Like, I just had to shove it down and just keep living life. I was young. I was not even quite out of high school yet. And so as my life progressed, the shame was always there. It was like I was living this lie, like I was a fake. And women wear masks. Either you're wearing a mask or you lie about the mask, but women have insecurities, and we're all wearing these masks. And so I wore the mask, and I wore it well for years and years and years, and I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell anybody about it. My fear was always that somebody was going to find out. And when I got married, the worst thing was telling my husband, and he was so gracious, but that shame was always there. It never goes away. And I needed that shame to go away. I knew the Lord. I knew He had forgiven me. But the difference for me, there's forgiveness and there's freedom. And I didn't have freedom. And so I didn't really know how to get that freedom. Like, I wanted it. And because I had a relationship with Him, I knew that that was possible, but I didn't understand how. And so a friend of mine, one of the very few friends that knew, she just said, I think there's something that the Lord wants to do with that shame. Like, and I would say, oh, I know I've been forgiven. I know. She's like, there's something else. There's something else. So she actually mentioned SaveOne to me. I didn't even know what SaveOne was. And she was the one that said, why don't you just Google it? And so I kind of just shunned that, pushed it aside, and I didn't do anything with it for several weeks. And then one morning, I was sitting with the Lord, and I guess He brought it to my mind. So I Googled it, and I found out that, you kind of just get in touch with Him, and that's what I did. Someone got back in touch with me. And so as I started going through this healing process, SaveOne was the vessel for me. And as scared as I was, because I walked back through that horrible time in my life, but God knew that's what I needed. And so I remember feeling like I had this wound, like an open wound that's festering. It's so painful. As I walked through SaveOne and I walked through the healing journey with Jesus, that wound was getting healed little by little until there was like a scar that didn't have pain. It was a reminder, because you never forget the abortion. It's always there. But there's a freedom and a healing process that takes place. And there was a scripture that I hung on to that said, those who look to him are radiant and their faces are never covered with shame. And just the healing that brought to my heart, knowing that with Jesus, he erases all of that. Like what I used to could never talk about, since I've been through SaveOne and walked through that journey with him, I can sit here and tell my story. I've had other women that I've been able to share my story with and help them with their shame. Like God uses his purposes for his glory. And he's more interested, what I found out, is in his purpose and not my popularity. Like there was the issue for me was the what if they know? What are they gonna think of me? And then I finally got to the point where, do I wish there was a different outcome? Absolutely. Do I wish I had given that baby up for adoption? Yes. But I cannot go back and erase any of it. My name is Stacey, and I'm a truth teller.